I'm just going to pray really quickly. Heavenly Father, thank you for the chance to be able to worship together this morning. I pray that as we dive deep into your word, that you would speak to our hearts. You would make yourself known to us in new ways, deeper ways. Help me to be faithful with the handling of your word, and that you would touch every single person here today. In Jesus' name, amen. So I've titled this message, The Ultimate Message. And not in that my message is the ultimate message, but in that God's message, the ultimate message. And it's going to be in two parts today, where the first half is like groundwork, some foundational stuff to set up the second half of what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to look at John 1. I've been doing laps in John 1 lately. And scholars would say that the book of John is referred to as the book of belief. John was so huge on belief. So I'm going to read from verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Now, as a kid, I always used to be like, that doesn't make sense. It's the English language, that does not make sense. And, we hear the song, you were the Word at the beginning. And we go, well, is this a literary technique that I'm not aware of? And I just thought, well, I actually never hear it talked about in sermons. So I thought it'd be good to spend a bit of time here. When we look at the Greek word, which was the original word, the logos, and noticing as well when it says the word, it's got the capital W word. And so that Greek word logos translates to a message. A message. It's like when we say, let's get the word out. It's this message. And when the Bible says word, it's actually referring to the message of God that includes everything about who he is, what he's all about, what he loves, what's dear to him, everything. That's what it means when it says the word. And so I thought, well, a helpful way to kind of read it and remember it is to, when we see the word, capital W, to go, the ultimate message of God to humanity. That's what it means. So I'm going to read that again and go on this time. In the beginning was the ultimate message of God to humanity. The Word was with God, and this ultimate message from God was God. He. It is embodied in a living person. We know that as Jesus. He was with God in the beginning. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I love how there's this acknowledgement of all that God is good, but also the acknowledgement of how, yes, there is evil in the world. Yes, there's brokenness. There is suffering. And he, being the light, is the one that dispels that darkness. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word, the ultimate message from God, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. I know we've heard this 1,000 times before, right? But it just caught my eye when it says, yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed. And it got me thinking, you know what? A message can be awesome. A message can be so, so good. And yet it's how it's received that brings the power. And it was like the Holy Spirit was telling me about, if Matt were to show you his love one day and he decided he was going to write you a card and tell you how much he loved you, maybe it comes with a beautiful bunch of flowers, and I were to read this card as he's pouring out his heart, and if I were to go, yeah, that's pretty good, it sounds nice, I think I believe it. I mean, that's on me, right? Especially if he's being super truthful and it's from his heart. The way that I receive it, I have a choice to go, I'm going to believe it or I'm not. And maybe he'll go one step further and go, you know what? Actions speak louder than words. So instead of writing her a card, I'm going to look after her. I blow a mountain of tissues when I'm sick, and he's going to clean them up. He's going to get his hands dirty. He's going to be by my bedside and be my nurse. Actions speak louder than words. And at the end of it, if I go, yeah, that was nice, but still not sure if he really loves me, that's really sad for me to feel unloved. And then what if he were to go one step further? What if there was something wrong with my heart, let's just for the example, and I needed a heart transplant, and he were to go, right, I'm going to give up my heart, I'm going to give up my life so that she can live. And if I were to turn around and go, it's a good thing to do, but I still don't know if he loves me. Oh, you could just see how devastating that would be for our relationship. We wouldn't be able to have a relationship. And so we're going here in John 1 because it's like God is saying, I'm God, right? He's so beyond our senses, our human senses. He's so much beyond our human comprehension. And yet, he wants to reveal himself to us. So he's like, how can I make myself known? How can I do it? I'm going to put flesh on and I'm going to reveal myself. I'm going to walk, I'm going to talk, I'm going to engage with humanity. And that is going to be my message. And so for us today, I know this is all stuff you've heard before, but it's like, I feel like there's a fresh encouragement this morning that when we remember what the word means, capital W, it's a message of cosmic proportions that speaks to humanity from the time humanity existed to the time humanity will cease to exist. And so that means for us that this message being the life of Jesus, it's like we go, okay, this is a lens now. When we look at the Bible, when we look at the Gospels, when we read about Jesus, we are hanging on to every word that he speaks, to every decision, to every choice, to every conversation, even how people respond to him, because all of that is part of this cosmic message to us. And so with that set in mind, we're going to go down to, we're going to zoom in to one of the many, many, many stories of Jesus. And we're going to look at John 11. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Wow. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. Not what I would do. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you were going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." It's kind of like a little side note. It's like, what are you talking about light and walking in the daytime here? We're talking about Lazarus. And this is part of a bigger picture, because John is all about light, and this is kind of a message for another time. But he's trying to sneak into this story. He's trying to teach them about light, and he's saying, "No, I'm the light. So there is absolutely nothing to fear, even though they are trying to assassinate me and kill me." And we forget how much that actually happened in the New Testament, how often it says, "And they tried to kill him, but they couldn't. And they tried to kill..." So going on. Interesting. And after he said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe." So Jesus is giving some very clear things about his purpose in this situation. "But let us go to him." Then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." That's huge. They had a relationship, the disciples had a relationship with these 3 siblings. And to even think of the possibility of Lazarus dying would move one of them, at least, Thomas, to the point where he would almost feel like there's no point living. That's pretty huge. And for Jesus to say, "For your sake, I'm going to not be there," because it's all about belief. I'm trying to teach you something about belief in this. Listen to what's coming up. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in their loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. And she says this to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." And it just hit me that this is the same Martha that was being too busy being busy for God. This is the same Martha that went, "Jesus, tell my sister to go and help me." Oh, so annoying, so immature, right? She's just sitting at your feet. And the word actually says she was listening. I feel like when Mary was at Jesus' feet, it was like she was taking in the message this cosmic message in awe. And here Martha was, completely missed it. And yet, in this situation, she has the faith to say, "Where were you, God? But I know that if you ask God for anything, he'll give it to you." Wow! Friendship with Jesus changes us, doesn't it? It can take us from being too busy for God. And even then, Jesus, yes, he kind of rebuked her in a way, but we see that he continued to get to know her. She continued to get to know him. And yet in this time of ultimate loss and grief, her faith rises up. That's amazing. And I can just imagine the response of Jesus going, "Wow, Martha, look at you. Your brother's just died and you dare say, but Jesus, if you ask the Father, I know you can do anything," right? That's Martha. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." And we know that. We know that when Jesus comes back, every single person who has died will be raised again. And she knew that. And so she's saying, yeah, I'm holding on to that promise. I know that. And he says, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me," again that word comes up, "will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who is to come into the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out. They followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, so not just Mary, but as he saw everyone around weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. And I don't know about you, but when we think, Jesus said to his disciples he was going to wake up Lazarus. He knew what he was going to do, right? So it's kind of like, Jesus, you know the end of the story. What is it? What's with all this drama? And yet it's like he's using this opportunity to show us something of who he is. We know that Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, they had a very special relationship with Jesus. Jesus healed so many people, right? He even raised people from the dead. But it was with these three, there was a special relationship. They spent time with him. There was a very close bond. And we see that when he sees them mourning, when he sees them feeling pain, he cannot help but be right in the middle with us. He cannot help his heart being moved to feel that grief, to feel that loss, And for him, it comes out as an eruption of the weeping that he's feeling and he's seeing around him. That was his response. It wasn't, how dare you ask me why I didn't come 2 days earlier? And they asked him, right? He didn't hold it against them. He didn't go, hang on, you just said that you believed I'm the Messiah, and yet you're saying, why didn't you come here? None of that. His response is weeping. And we know Jesus wept, the shortest verse in the Bible. It's almost like it didn't even deserve a continuation. I can just imagine John penning those words and having to take a moment before he writes on. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? I know I would have asked that question. I know many of us would be. So he's just spent time weeping. He's asked, okay, where have you laid them? And then it says, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. Again, it was like he just crumbled again with all the emotion. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So it's kind of like, oh, poor Martha. Here she is going, I believe that at the end of time when Jesus comes back, he'll be back. It's all good. I know that. And then Jesus goes to the tomb and she's going, Jesus, it's 4 days. And it just occurred to me, you know what, this was, 2,500 years ago. I don't know of any story of any human being, and maybe it's just because of how little I know or am aware, of any human being coming back from the dead after 4 days. We know science and health and, the gift of all of those things has helped us overcome death in a lot of ways, right? Like I've even heard, thank God for defibrillators, thank God for all of those things. And I've heard of people coming back from the dead after, 2 hours, but 4 days? It was almost as if he was like, here is something that no amount of human science or effort or intellect, nothing could ever bring back a body after 4 days. And yet I'm going to do it. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights. This is Lazarus, 4 days. And here in the beginning, he's saying, I am the resurrection, I am the life. I'm going to go well beyond what you think you could imagine is possible. This is our Jesus. The whole time, he's trying to give a statement to humanity. This is me. I just want you to believe that I am God. And Martha here, who can blame her? That's a pretty amazing faith to be able to go, Jesus, but I know, you're going to raise us all up again. But it's like she wasn't expecting. She said it, but I know, God, if you ask anything, it'll happen. But when she actually said, hang on, God, 4 days, the odor, it revealed to us the extent of how much she believed. And this is not to, make you feel bad or anything. This is not what Jesus is trying to do at all. I actually think Jesus is trying to respond to her. He's like, yes, no, keep believing. And for us today, I feel like it's we know death. We know plenty of us have suffered loss. I know, even in this room. And this is not a message to say, you need to start believing that God can raise people from the dead. It's not about that at all. We're looking at this very specific story, and Jesus had a very specific purpose with what he was doing with Lazarus. Does it mean that Jesus doesn't raise people from the dead? No. But in this situation, it's like, well, I think we can make room in our heart for God to do the impossible. That's what we can glean from here. We don't go from one extreme of Jesus can heal every single person, and Jesus can. He can. Jesus will heal every single person. Jesus will raise every single person from the dead. That's a bit extreme, right? That's a bit extreme. Or we can go to the other extreme and go, no, Jesus just won't do that. He doesn't do that. He'll never do that. It's all about at the end. Or we can go, okay, God, we know the end. We have hope in the end. Jesus confirmed it in his words. Even if you die, right? Even in death, I am the resurrection. But we can go, hey, you know what? I can make room in my heart for God to do the impossible. What it comes down to is spending that time with him. The Mary and Martha conversation with Jesus, that in everything we go through with this close friendship that we have with him. And we listen to what he has to say. And he speaks to us about our particular situation. He shows us how much he grieves with us. And he speaks his words to our hearts and how to call us forward. Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Belief, it's a powerful thing. And even as you go into the next chapter, the next heading I think is the plot to kill Jesus. And I think in verse 48, it even says that they were so angered, they wanted to kill Jesus. And again, the word pops up because they were concerned that people would believe. Their unbelief stirred so much evil that they actually wanted to kill Lazarus. Can you imagine that? We're talking about the super holy religious people of that time were so angered in their unbelief that they wanted to murder someone. That's huge. We're seeing the extreme opposite here. Mary and Martha and Lazarus having this amazing relationship, and yet the extreme opposite of those who could not believe, who would not believe, and wanted to stop everybody from believing. That's huge. So I just wrote a couple of things down of what can we observe. Others knew Jesus well, but in this story we see the depth of friendship that Jesus wants to display so that we get a glimpse of what's actually available to us today. We get to either be on the fringes. We know Jesus, yeah, I know that guy, I saw him do those things, he's great. Or we get to know him in such a personal way. And it's amazing, right? Because if we go back to John 1, he's actually saying it's even better than just a close relationship with Jesus, a close friendship. It says that we're adopted into the family of God, meaning our God has given us like a new spiritual DNA, and in this relationship that we have with him, we are loved by our Father who is so perfect, a Father who could love us, who will love us and does love us more perfectly than any earthly father could. This is not just a friendship. This is a family bond that is forged through time spent with him. This is an amazing gift. The rich relationship with Jesus changes you. I know I've been too busy for God. I know I've been too busy looking like I'm good with God. And I know that Jesus longs to have that real relationship with us. And he never looks on us. He never looks on us with condemnation. It's just a come, sit by me. And I think of Mary. Mary spent a lot of time at Jesus' feet, both when Jesus came to visit Mary and Martha was being busy in the kitchen. She was at Jesus' feet then. And then in the loss, in the grief, she fell at Jesus' feet then. And then after that, we see later on in the next chapter, Mary goes as far again to break into a Pharisee's house while they're having dinner, to lay herself down and pour out expensive perfume upon the feet of Jesus and wipe it with her tears and her hair. This is extravagant relationship with Jesus. In James it says, "Draw near to me and I will draw near to you." I love that promise. It's not, I might draw near to you, or maybe if you get all your stuff sorted, maybe if you got your life right. No, it's draw near to me and I will. There's no question about it. I will draw near to you. Another thing that's challenged me is this idea of belief. Belief in the biblical sense of what John is talking about in this book, but also what I feel like Jesus is trying to get at too. Belief is so much more than the thought you agree with in your mind. It is the complete and joyful acceptance and trust of the message, his message, that you carry in your heart. And the effect is that it burns like a flame within you. Belief is so much more than a thought you agree with in your mind. It's so easy for our faith to become like that. Hey, yes, I believe all those things about Jesus. Yes, I agree, I'm right there with you. But has it completely been something that I dwell on and that I fully accept and fully trust, especially in a season of great loss and in a season of great trial? It's that belief that's what will carry us through. And so I want to invite you to just reflect on where you're at. This amazing message, the ultimate message of an amazing, huge God beyond comprehension, of cosmic proportions, this message, this ultimate message that he wants to give us to humanity. Where are we with that today? Where do you see yourself? Are we like Martha? Are we still back in the being busy for God? Are we like Mary? And this is not a thing to make you feel bad. It's just hey, where is Jesus now? Where do you see him now? Where do you see yourself in him? And how do you want to respond to him? Because his response to you will always be love. And I'm just going to move into a time of communion now. We've looked at the story of Lazarus today, and I'm sure there are other things that we could have drawn out. Maybe you've even made some other observations that I haven't brought forward today. But the climax, the grand climax of his demonstration of love to us is what he did on the cross. And we're going to move into a time of remembering that. And when he was at the Last Supper, and I'm just going to read from 1 Corinthians 11, 24 to 26. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." I'm just going to invite you to come up and receive the emblems now.